Now with Scott Jennings. He previously worked for former President George W. Bush and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. And Maura Gillespie. She was Deputy Chief of Staff for former Congressman Adam Kinzinger, also a press advisor to former Speaker John Boehner. She's also the founder of BlueStack Strategies. Thank you both for being with us. Scott, first to you. On the campaign trail, the subject of the threat that Trump poses to democracy, it's really only been brought up by Chris Christie. It doesn't appear to be a winning issue on the right. Is that why Trump's rivals aren't specifically calling him out on it?
Well, defending democracy means something very different to Trump's voters than it does to, say, Joe Biden's voters. I mean, I do think if you look at the polling, it pops, the term pops for both Republicans and Democrats. But if you're somebody who loves Donald Trump, you think democracy was damaged by Biden winning. And if you're somebody who voted for Biden, you think Donald Trump tried to steal the election. So I actually do think you're going to hear both parties talk about it. But of course, what it means to both sides is something very, very different. I do think the Democrats have had some success with it, with independent voters. We saw that manifest itself in November of 2022.
Maura, let's talk about these healthcare comments, because we're hearing them now over the weekend from Trump and also from DeSantis. Do you think that this is a good move, or is this fraught?
It's an easy win, I think, as far as a talking point goes. It's easy to say, let's repeal Obamacare, right? But it takes real leadership to actually come forward with a real plan and ideas and explain to the voters how you would improve upon our healthcare system by making it more transparent, affordable, and accessible. So, while it's easy to say those things, and Trump and DeSantis are going to use it as a rallying cry and use it to campaign off of, I hope voters are actually going to follow up and wonder how they would actually make our healthcare system better.
What's the strategy, Maura, when you're talking about repealing and replacing something that is popular with 3 out of 5 Americans?
Again, it's explaining to them how it benefits them. We are a nation that really is, as families are looking at their bottom dollar and what they're spending money on, they want to know how a policy or how a plan is going to impact them personally, their families. And so I think talking to them about those issues and really zeroing in on that for them is going to make the most impact to voters. But again, I think for the Trump base, as Scott mentioned, they're going to want to hear one thing, but the more moderate and the independent voters are going to want to hear concrete plans.
And Scott, you know well the way that the last effort to repeal and replace Obamacare went in the Senate, basically up in flames, and it backfired on Donald Trump. If you look at the 2018 election, why are Republicans bringing this strategy up again, do you think?
Well, it's one thing to say I'm going to replace or repeal all of Obamacare. I think the better thing to talk about here would be the thing that people often or most often bring up as a problem with American health care, and that's affordability. I mean, it is true that premiums are up. It is true that deductibles are up. And it's also true that if you're someone who pays for their health care, either a monthly premium through your employer or out on the open market, oftentimes it feels like your insurance costs have gone up, but your coverage has gotten worse. So I think instead of repealing Obamacare full stop, the real conversation, if I were advising a candidate, is how am I going to bring down costs and make it feel like your insurance is actually insurance and not something that's just gotten more expensive but worse in quality. So I think it depends on who you ask. If you're somebody who gets health care for free, you probably think it's great. If you're somebody who has been paying for it, or you own a small business and you're paying for it and for your employees, you probably don't think the private insurance market's done very well for the last few years.
That sounds like a thought-out argument from Scott, not exactly what we've heard from Donald Trump. So I guess the question I was getting to more specifically is, why is Donald Trump bringing it up this way at this time when it hasn't yielded success for him before?
Well, I think he's bringing it up because he still believes that Republicans want to repeal Obamacare, and he probably feels like it was a failure that it didn't happen on his watch. And so it may be a knee-jerk reaction also to something he read. I read in the press that he may have read an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal talking about Obamacare, and he kind of went out and didn't think it through and just sort of brought it up. I mean, he often does that. And so I wouldn't expect that he has a fully thought-out strategy or a plan here, but it's something that crossed his desk and he said it out loud. I mean, this is par for the course for the way Donald Trump manages political communications. But if you want to have a health care debate in this election, there's a way to do it. But you got to get laser focused on affordability and have a plan to say, here's how I'm going to make it more affordable than the other guy.
Maura, we've been hearing from former Congresswoman Liz Cheney. She's been warning about 2024, about former President Trump, of course, but also about the role specifically that Speaker Mike Johnson could play, considering his role last time. You worked for House Speaker. Do you share any of these concerns, and how do you see her criticism here?
I understand her concerns, and I do think that when we're looking at 2024, there is the real threat to our democracy. As far as, quite frankly, I think either candidate, if they win, that people are saying are the two options we have, which I hope is not the two options, Biden versus Trump again, they're going to be in their 80s. And why are they running? Either candidate, why are they running? That for power? Is it so the other guy doesn't win? Those aren't good enough reasons to be the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States of America. And so I think her concerns, obviously, she's mostly focused on her experience with Trump and through her, front row seat during the January 6th committee, and seeing how he's already tried to abuse the power of the presidency. But, basically our options in those two scenarios are somebody who doesn't seem to understand how the Constitution works, and somebody else who doesn't seem to understand half the time where he is. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying that as a genuine concern as a voter and as somebody who's looking at this, quite frankly, as a concern from both sides of our democracy and both sides of where our Constitution stands in 2024. So I think people need to be more thoughtful about it. And those who are, because they're lamenting Biden, are just going to go to Trump, that's not good enough. That's lazy to me. And I think we really need to be more focused on, can we get a better option up here before next year?
Scott, what do you think about her concerns about Speaker Johnson?
Well, obviously, he was a proponent of a piece of Donald Trump's argument to invalidate the 2020 election. He had helped concoct the legal theory about, the lawsuit that was filed was ultimately, not held up by the courts. Look, I tend to think the American people are going to make a fairly clear decision in 2020. I don't know what that decision is going to be, but my supposition is they're going to make a clear decision. And these elections have been close for a long time, but I ultimately have a lot of faith in the people. I have a lot of faith in our constitutional order, and I also have faith in the institutions. I know that may sound crazy in this day and age, but no matter what you did in the past, I think once you are the Speaker of the House or you are the Vice President of the United States, which we saw with Mike Pence, or when you hold a title that is constitutionally recognized and you have responsibility to do something on a certain day, I guess I'm going to view the glass as half full. I think all these people have integrity, and I don't believe our constitutional order will be hijacked by anybody, no matter who wins in 2024.
All right, you have some faith. There's some waiting and seeing. We will see.